All right. We can go and get started. You guys agree? No, you don't want to sit here for another 20 minutes? No? Okay. People are going to walk in, I suppose, as we keep going, but I don't want to develop like a habit of starting like 10 or 15 minutes late. So we're just going to start and develop that trend. So anyways, guys, thanks for showing up for our general body meeting. This is technically our last one if we're not including our election GBM, which is crazy to say. But here we are. We got some pretty exciting announcements to make because for the longest time, I always say, hey, guys, guess what? We have some great things planned. Stay tuned. But today we can actually make some concrete statements about that. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We'll show you the QR code for our attendance. Please scan that. Go through that. Fill it out, Carl. You're not required to do this one. Don't worry. Please fill this out. This is just to get information about you in case you're new to our organization. And then we're going to be doing some stuff later on about volunteering for Sun and Fun. And we'll talk about that once we get to those relevant slides. So, yeah. Show of hands, is this anybody's first event for Pegasus Pilots? No? Nobody knew? Your first time? Yeah. Welcome. Okay. Welcome. Last time, half the room put their hands up. So we were a little taken aback by that, but we're not going to complain. So, let's see, and then we'll let you guys continue to fill out that attendance code. No rush on it. But in case you do not have it, that's our Instagram, YouTube, and our Discord. The QR codes for each is displayed on the screen. So if you guys want to check that out as well, we put out information, put out videos, and if you miss a meeting, no worries, we'll record that and put it out there as well for you. So we'll go to the next slide. Can you go back one more, please? Thank you. So the reason why I put this up here is just to make sure that we're kind of on the same page or something. A lot of people have been asking me what's the whole deal with third time's a charm. I'll just kind of get the story out there. Our faculty advisor, Dr. Jensch, who was the chair of the psychology department, told us back in the 90s when he was at UCF, there was some type of flying organization. And then that kind of happened, and then it just fell apart. And then back in 2021, there was something similar, and then that kind of happened, but the guy left to USF, and then that happened. So there's kind of been that joke, like, oh, we're the third time's a charm. That's kind of how that happened. That's our unofficial squadron logo. That's the story. So I want to make sure that's clear. Next slide. All right, spring dues. Thank you to everyone who's been paying. You paid? I did. You paid. Gave it to her? Not yet, but you have it. She has money. Take it from her before she leaves. You paid. And then shame on you. No, I'm kidding. But whoever else hasn't paid, that's our QR code for it. We're not going to try to be pushy about it because we don't have to be. We have reasons to be upfront, we could say, about our dues for this semester and going forward. We'll elaborate that in the future, but that's the QR code for it. And if you don't get the chance to scan it, no worries. We'll circle back to that later. Next slide. Again, we're just going to cover some updates from what's happened since we last gotten the chance to meet, talk about some of our upcoming events. Flight school partnership update. Ooh, I wonder what that could be. We'll talk about volunteering for Sun and Fun. We'll talk about the stuff we talked about before, our elections, talking about merchandise stuff. We're not going to talk about navigating the Discord. That would take up too much time. We'll talk about the VAC. Our guest speaker, Carl, for those of you who haven't yet met him. We have met before because I ran into you when I was volunteering at the VAC. So he can tell you about that as well. And then we'll transition, of course, to Carl to give his speech and share some stories. He's got some cool stories to share. So, Brandon, this is your turn to talk. Tell it to him.
Everyone pull out your phone. If you scan the QR code, you're going to download an app called Double Good. This is going to be our fundraiser that we're going to do. And I'm not just asking you to give us money for nothing. So if you want to go to the next slide, we have incentives for y'all to donate. Maybe the numbers seem big. I promise it's way easier to raise than it looks. My high school, we had around 80 people in our program, and we raised $11,000. So if y'all are active, proactive with it, we can get as much money as possible so we can give back to you. $100, your dues are going to be free next semester. That's it. $250, which is free dues for the flight training tier. So that gives you the discounts for our flight, hours and getting in the plane. And then also an exclusive hoodie, which will only be available to people who get over $250. Then we have $600, which is a free discovery flight. That's kind of big since you're not paying for it. You're just having other people fundraise for us. By the way, you're not paying out of pocket. This is a fundraiser. We'll get into it in just a moment. And then for the top three that raise over $600, we're gonna raise it to the room if y'all have any ideas. If you don't have anything now, let us know in the future. But it could be something cool, something exciting, some nice incentive. But basically, if y'all want to scan this, it'll bring you to an app, Double Good. You'll download, you'll put in the code, and you'll be added to the Pegasus Pilots fundraising area. From there, you'll have links, you'll have emails you'll send out, and basically you send it to your friends, your family, some random guy off the street, and they buy popcorn. And whatever they buy, 50% of those proceeds go directly to us. So if they're buying, 5 bags of popcorn, we get a good amount of money. So that is all.
Thank you. And you want to tell them real quickly how you did in high school with it? Because you've done that before.
I said that, yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, good.
So
thousands of dollars.
This is only going on for 4 days, by the way. So it's going to be a sprint, not a marathon. So do as much as you can in 4 days, and there will be proper incentives with it.
Brandon, when does that start?
Right now, it starts in 3 minutes.
Oh, 6:15.
So you have from now until
Okay.
March 8th to get in as much as you can. That is all.
Cool. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. All right, so since our last, one single clap for Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. 5 big booms? Oh, no. All right, well, we had our little thing at the NBAA. That was the conference at Executive. Noah, you went, right?
I did.
What was it like?
It was pretty cool.
Pretty cool. What type of planes did you get to see?
Business jets,
What type of business jets? Do you remember what they were?
Gulfstreams, Globals, Challengers, Citations.
Pilatus. We sat in the Pilatus for I think 10, 15 minutes just having a little impromptu business meeting. Right? But it was a cool event. We got some folks out there. It was free with the UCF ID for what it's worth. So the next time it happens, and either next year or next couple of years, fingers crossed, that's a cool event to attend. Let's see, Josh is working hard to get some of our past videos up, so he's doing that. He's in class right now, so that's why he's not here. And then we got some new connections that'll be, again, with future activities that are like facility tours. These are the kinds of things that will be only open to due paying members. So GBMs will be free, but something like a facility tour of Orange County Sheriff's Aviation, they have 5 helicopters, a fixed wing, doing an airport tour of Executive or Orlando International, that's under the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. Those types of things are going to be due paying members only. So that's just the gist with that. Next slide, please. These are some of our upcoming events. Not next Saturday, as in this upcoming Saturday, next week's Saturday. We're having our Open Cockpit Day Social at the VAC Carl. You're not sure if you'll be there yet, but if you are there, you get to see Carl again and talk to him. I don't know if you guys ever get the chance to go there, but if you do, whenever this man talks, he knows his stuff. You can put him anywhere. You put him anywhere on the facility, anywhere in the museum, and he will just go on and on about all these cool facts about whatever airframe you're looking at. It's pretty fascinating. So we're doing that next March 15th. March 25th is the Warbird Workshop with Nick Infantino. We'll dig into that just a little bit more. That's going to be dues paying members only for future workshops. The Learn and Fly Workshop was just a free thing we did. And then we'll have our election GBM after Sun and Fun, which is April 1st through 6th. We're only going to be there April 4, 5, and 6, excuse me. And then we have some other things that are kind of in the works. There's a workshop on the 15th that we're scheduled to do. And then we're trying to get our facility tour of Daytona approved. I didn't put it up here, but as of right now, the date is March 28th. That's the date I gave them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Next slide, please. A little bit later was actually a few seconds. So let's talk about this. It's waiting to be approved, due paying members only, and I say 3 to 6 weeks as a general, just for your information in case they say no or something like that happens. It'll be like, carpooling, just find friends. We'll get something in the Discord set up. It'll be pretty informal. And you'll get to, as I understand, you'll get to see the control tower, get to see maintenance operations, ARFF, aircraft rescue firefighting. From what I understand, this is what will be shown. No promises, but this is my understanding of it. I just made a phone call, and we'll see where it goes. So yeah. That's our roadmap for the semester, where, again, this is our last regular GBM. We just have our Open Cockpit Day Social, the Warbird Workshop, Sun and Fun, and then Election GBM, and there goes the spring semester. Great. Alrighty. This is the part that I have been looking forward to for quite a while, and we can actually say something solidly now that we have some more development. So we haven't announced on social media yet, but this is something we can actually approach people and talk about. So if you go to the next slide, our acronym, by the way, is Pegasus Pilots, but we like to say PP. So my laptop is full of Andrew's personal PP files, Andrew's personal PP documentation. That's the reason why. It's our acronym.
Into the two-bunch information category.
Yes. But just in case anyone's on my laptop, that's why it's there, just in case you're wondering. Right. So anyways, Pegasus Pilots, we are going to be partnering with Orlando Flight Training. I know I talked about, I think, J&P Aviation to some of you guys. It's the same thing. They're just going to rename themselves to Orlando Flight Training, same thing. So we're going to be partnering with them. That's one of the planes that they fly. If you go to the next slide, we have some more concrete details there to show you. So we sat down with Jonathan Salazar, the guy who owns it. He flies private jets for his full-time for an air ambulance charity. He's a chief pilot for them. And then on the side, he does the flight school thing. So their hourly rates already are competitive. If you go to local flight schools and you look at their rates, it could be in the high 100s or low 200s range. So if we partner with those flight schools, hypothetically, even those discounts are not as competitive as this school's $165 an hour wet rate. And for those who don't know what that means, your wet rate includes everything as far as fuel goes. So when you're paying that hourly rate, that's it. There's no additional costs incurred with the exception of maybe flying somewhere, staying overnight, landing fees, etc. So that's what this means. On top of that already competitive hourly wet rate, the owner of J&P, whose name is Jonathan Salazar, if I haven't yet mentioned it, was willing to work with us even further and knock that down to $155 an hour. This is the wet rate for the plane. That's not including the instructor's rate. So your actual hourly cost is going to be more than that. However, we did discuss trying to move around some numbers for the hourly rate for the instructor to bring the total cost down as much as possible. But these are the things that, from what he has told me, I can tell you guys with certainty. So that $10 an hour difference, if you're flying, let's say a minimum of 40 hours, that's going to be $400 in savings. And you're not going to take 40 hours. It's going to likely be more than that. And do that for a lot more flying. The saving in total is going to be, and not to exaggerate, literally in the thousands. So this is something that we've been working for a long time. We're happy to actually announce that, and more details are to come with that. And yeah, that's the deal with them. So we'll go to the next slide. Again, if you have questions, please approach us after. We'll talk about it some more. Now, this is the part that I want to kind of talk about a little bit more, which is the Sun and Fun volunteering that we'll be doing. Gabby, if you go to the next slide, I'll show them some stuff about it. So what's going to happen is, long story short, you go to Sun Fun anyways, I'm assuming, because you're in this room, right? Okay, well, if you're going to go there, want to get the chance to volunteer and meet some people while you're doing that. You can volunteer on your own. I'll be up front and I'll be clear with that. However, if you want to find a way to help us make money, this is a great way of doing so. We're going to try to add more incentives to it to actually make it worth the while for you. So what happens when you volunteer is you're going to get free admission to the air show. So you're not paying the $40 or $45 for the day you're going. Your parking ticket, so there is the admission to enter, and then the vehicle you're in is going to have a separate admittance fee. It's like $10 or something. That's also waived for you. If you're doing volunteering in the morning, I know they give you lunch. I'm guessing it's dinner for the PM shift, something like that. So that stuff is covered for you. A little extra cherry on top for us is that this is going to provide us $1,500. And if we crunch the numbers right, per person, we're going to be getting more per person than what we would otherwise get for your dues. So to make it more incentivizing for you, if you volunteer with us and we get the required amount of people, because they have a required amount of people to volunteer for, if we get enough amount of people, we will waive your dues for the fall semester. So if you go to the next slide, I'll elaborate on that just a little bit more. We're just going to do parking. You'll be outside, tell cars where to park. You'll fill up the lots. It's really not that hard. All right. If you're going to be a pilot, I'm hoping you can direct cars, right? Okay. So that's the deal with that. The little thing in green over here is kind of important. That's why it's highlighted and underlined. It's for a reason. I recommend you volunteer in the morning, okay? If you're going to the Sun and Fun, you want to see the air show, the Sun and Fun air show is in the afternoon. So if you do the PM shift for volunteering, you're going to be like directing traffic and, oh man, it looks really cool, you know? So go in the morning. I know 6:30 a.m. sucks, but you're going to get to see the air show for free after you do your volunteering shift. So that's the gist of that. If you go to the next slide, we have a QR code that takes you to our sign-up form. So if you guys want to scan this, this will get you to fill out some information. It has all the relevant stuff with the shifts on there, and it'll also be posted later on in the Discord and on our social media. All right, everyone, so we're going to go ahead and move forward just for the sake of time. If you didn't get to to it. A lot of us are going to stay after the talk, so no biggie on that. I'm going to pass it over to Lance for just a second. He's going to provide you guys some updates because, as you know, we've always been saying if you pay your dues, you get your shirts included. That's still true. But Lance is going to provide some updates with shirts. Lance, go ahead.
Yes, very brief update about the shirts, but it's kind of small. If you would like to see a bigger picture after the meeting, then I can show that to you. But this is our semi-final, or mostly finalized Pegasus Pilots shirt design for this semester and going forward. It's got sort of an upper chest logo with cool Pegasus Pilots font and some wings on it with the Pegasus logo. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really comfortable too. Let's see what else we got. And I think that's about it. So it is included with the Spring 25 dues, and hopefully we should get them by the next workshop. So if you'd like one of these shirts, show up to the next workshop, which is on the 25th of March, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
It's after spring break.
yeah,
So.
yeah, after spring break. But just an update on the shirts. That's what we got so far. So if you
Yep.
have any questions or want to see a more detailed picture, come see us after.
Cool. And dues are always open the entire semester. We're not going to say no to you offering us your money. However, for shirts, there's a deadline. It's March 15th. That's the only thing we'll say. And then, yeah, once you get the shirts, we'll distribute to you, however, at workshops, events, meet up with us, text us, whatever. So potential spam. Well, I got to call. No, I'm kidding. All right, officer elections. We'll talk about this one really quickly because there's really not much to say, but I'll just elaborate on it in just a bit. I can tell you that it's going to be on April 8th. It'll be an in-person event. It'll be open only to due-paying members, so random people off the street can't just cast in their vote and some bro from a frat or something can't take it. No, we're not trying to do that, so that's the deal with that. I'm sure you're also noticing a theme that more things are becoming dues restricted. It's for a reason. So open to due-paying members only. We'll be putting out a Google Forms for whoever would be interested in getting involved in any way, shape, or form. A lot of you guys ask me, hey, Andrew, how can I get involved? And we appreciate that. So this is one of the ways of doing so. So, Gabby, you are graduating, unfortunately,
I am.
this semester, but she's the auxiliary director, so that position will be open. And then Max is not here, but he is our treasurer, and that position will also be open for the fall semester. So just to be clear, over the summer, nothing really happens with RSOs. It'll all be informal, small things, but things really pick up in the fall and spring. So that position for you will start in the upcoming fall semester. So next slide, please. Logo design competition. We'll talk about that just a little bit. What we've kind of narrowed down is that every year there's going to be like a different type of shirt. So the spring semester shirt is just for this semester, going into the fall semester next year, and into the spring semester after, which is spring of 2026. That will be the shirt for that year. We're going to be opening up a competition to everybody in the club. So we have, how many hundred people is it in the Discord? All of those people have the ability to put in their input. We're all going to vote on it. Again, the votes are only to due-paying members. And then on the election GBM, all that happens. So election GBM date, a lot of things could or could not change within the club. And that's going to include voting on and finalizing our design for our shirt for the next school year, if that makes sense. And then this is just stuff that if you know how logo designs work, you're familiar with any of this stuff, this language looks familiar to you. All it means is we need to be able to use this for various things. So for example, third time's a charm. We need to have different variations of that. If we're having a black and white themed graphic, for whatever reason, we need to have that from you, like that, to just throw in there. If we're having a shirt, we're having a hoodie, a coaster, or anything, we need to have different variations of your design. That's it. Any other questions? Please talk to me after. Next slide, please. We're going to be opening that March 7th. That's when we're projecting to put the information out. It'll close at the end of March on the 28th. Internally, the officers will filter through everything, just making everything neat and organized. We'll vote on it at the election. That's that. Warbird Workshop. Gabby, this is all you.
It is all me, thank you. Technically, it's not all me, it's my buddy Nick.
Okay.
So, I've got a buddy here. I know some of you guys have heard me yap about Nick. He's very into warbirds. He's the youngest person to start his CAF wing. It's the New England wing. They have one aircraft right now. It's the PT 23 right here. And he's also a scanner on Fifi. And it looks like him in a T6 right here. So he's very experienced, and he's currently an A&P, not candidate, but he's currently in school for his A&P. And he wants to come into you guys and give you a speech about how do you get more involved in warbirds, how do you get more involved in mechanics, etc. Because it's really on a who you know basis and how you present yourself to other people. And it's a very, very good community, and I highly recommend coming to listen to Nick speak if you're interested in warbirds and just hanging around that. You don't even have to want to fly them or work on them. It's just a very cool culture to be surrounded by these people, and I highly recommend you guys come out to see them.
Woo. Thank you. All right, thanks, Gabby. Open Cockpit Day, that's our next social that we talked about briefly. We'll talk about that just a little bit more. Again, it's not going to be this upcoming Saturday, but rather the Saturday after that. Information will go out in the Discord to coordinate who wants to show up to it. If you go to the next slide, please, there's stuff on there for it. So those are the hours. I'm sure you can read. I'm not going to read it for you. But those are the hours in which it'll be held. It's going to be at the VAC. Show of hands, who has not been to the VAC yet? Oh, boy, we're going to fix that. Have you been?
Maybe?
You didn't seem so sure. You, yeah, Titus.
Actually, yeah.
Tico Werber. Okay, so you've been there. So no big deal from here. I think it's like a little less than an hour, roughly, when I've driven from here to the VAC. Maybe less. I don't know. But yeah, not too far of a drive. And then they're gonna have an open cockpit day. The next slide actually details the aircraft that they have open. So Josh will be able to tell you some more fun facts. I know Josh did work on the Fuga Magister. That's the French fighter.
French, but the one that we have was actually built by Israeli aircraft industries in Israel under license from the French.
Roger that. Okay, so
But it is-
backstory to it, but it's a French fighter. Okay, got you. So there's gonna be a couple cockpits open. Is the F-14 gonna be open or no?
Pardon?
F-14, is that gonna be open? I heard rumors.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
They didn't list that, but
Okay.
it wouldn't surprise me if they have it open, because that's a full cockpit.
Yeah, and they're waiting for the Navy. The Navy has to approve it if they open up the F-14, right? No? Okay.
Fly the airplane out of there.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Just like the movie. Okay, so anyways, though, that's the deal with it. Got to pay $20 to go there, but it's a cool event to go to. It's just a social thing, more than anything. Like Sun and Fun, but in Titusville, in a way. So yeah, that's that. Show up. That's the flyer for it, and then this kind of details what they actually have available. I wonder if I can volunteer as a sim instructor, because that's what I technically do. So, womp.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Okay, cool. Now we're going to try to admit, did you have your Kahoot ready to go? Okay. He's eating his dinner right now, but he has the Kahoot ready to go. So we'll do like a quick, 10 question long Kahoot? Is that how long it is? 10 question long Kahoot, and then we'll transition over to Carl, and you can kind of take it however you want to, whatever format you like to. We'll do the little game thing first, and then I don't know. Don't worry about the music.
Whoops, lost connection.
We don't need music. We need a thing. So it's going to be up here on the screen.
Is it, or is it gonna come here?
Yeah, both. What year was the first Sun and Fun held? Oh, I'd be embarrassed if I don't.
Oh, here, we're gonna look, we can look at the screen right here.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, what's 51 minus?
You're gonna make it to the next one. Right, they have everyone. I think you just little T. I don't see anyone looking down. Yeah. Okay.
Wait, who's in first place?
Actually, we're about to find out. No, what? Oh, wait, isn't it based on time? Like whoever
It's based
goes
on time and
first
accuracy.
who's right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're fastest and first, you get way more points.
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm in 15th place.
I'm an 8th.
There you go.
All right, Paulo, I'm coming for you.
All right. Ooh, this is something y'all should know. Come on now.
I don't know this.
I know this one.
Oh, I actually don't know this.
But I know how
actually,
I know how I have to answer.
No, because so at Thunder Fun, the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds typically alternate.
What?
So
Oh, they were there last year, yeah. I'm thinking of Key West Airlines.
Thunderbirds are there last year, so that's how you kind of figure it out.
That's gonna be cool.
Oh, I'm in 14th place.
What? Okay.
Hey, you can't play, man. You're the
Oh
president.
yeah, you're right. Imagine I win. It's rigged. It's a rigged. All right. Official designation.
Oh no! How can I take one back? No.
Once it's in, it's in.
I think I put the most blatantly obvious. Incorrect? No, it's correct. Let's go. Woohoo!
What? Only second.
Alex. Ooh.
Okay. Fun Fun is often very. Okay, this one we should know.
Oh, come on.
This one we know.
11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. 13s, we have 15 people. Oshkosh. Okay. Well, there we go. Alex. Okay. Goodbye. Great. Largest annual fundraising.
Ooh, I'm gonna get this one wrong.
NASA.
Oh, never mind. I thought it was a EAA, but I was
That's
like,
awesome. The FAA is funded by Sun and Fun. Yeah. So, okay, just so y'all know, this is actually a fun fact. I did not know this until I was riding in the golf cart with the volunteer director. Sun Fun is just a big fundraiser. It's a huge, giant fundraiser for the Aerospace Center of Excellence. If you ever see like the school campus that's on the Lakeland Airport, that's what Sun and Fun is, a big old fundraiser. Fun fact. Ooh, okay, now it's different.
I quite possibly could get already.
See if Carl gets this one wrong.
There's 2 Corsairs?
5, 7. Okay. Okay.
Dang. Oh, there you go. All right,
There you go.
Fourth
Okay.
place.
Okay. Brain's coming
Fourth
in.
place? Where'd it go?
Oh, he's gonna get this one. Wait, I think it's wrong. Okay.
Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Slough?
Slow.
Short, little, ugly.
Yeah. I knew that the buff.
Yeah, the buff is
Yeah.
big.
I know the buff is. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you guys should know this one. Fast and agile.
I picked that. That's a good choice.
You did pick it?
If you pick
Like,
that,
oh, man, it happened.
I lost my connection.
Oh,
I
come
keep
on.
dumping.
no.
Oh, you got it right.
Okay. Fighter assault, fleet and airborne. Interesting. So I
I looked through that.
I need to put.
Noah.
Dude, I got. No.
You don't know? Actually, I don't know anything about airplanes.
Oh yeah, that's true. You're a space guy. Okay. Let's see where we're at now. Whoa!
Oh.
What a surprise! The guy who used to fly the F-18 got done right. Okay. Okay. Last question. Oh,
This is a good one.
That's a trick question. No, or not a trick question.
That is definitely not. You're pointing the machine gun at you guys. All right, let's see who came in first. Noah. Okay. Calvin. Yeah! All right, Brain came in first. I would be so pissed if our guest speaker did not come in first place. That would not leave a good taste in your mouth, I don't think. So, okay, cool. Fun. Carl, are you ready to speak?
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Here's $20 now.
We don't have
You cheated me on that to make me win, right? Yeah.
right.
Hi, my name is Carl Braun, call sign Brain. I spent 20 years active duty in the Navy and then followed by 20 years at United Airlines. Are all of you currently flying airplanes?
Not everybody. Raise your hand if you're currently flying. How about that? We'll do that.
Yeah, most everybody. And the rest of you, are you planning on flying airplanes? Okay. The only thing for you people flying airplanes is, in this environment is money. So save your money, get your money however you can, because it's very expensive. But it's the best money you will ever spend. Having said that, most of you guys, or a lot of you people talked about flying at the airlines. I have to make this pitch. You got a lot of years to fly. Currently, you can fly for the airlines Part 121 until you're 65 years old. By the time you people get there, that may go substantially up. It used to be that you could not fly Part 121, which is scheduled airline service, which means all the airlines past 60. But in 2007, they upped that to 65. There are entities that are trying to up that now to 67, 67 and a half, 68. I don't think that's going to be happening soon because the aeromedical information doesn't really support that at that point. Because what happens is as you get older, we all start degenerating and everybody does it at a different rate. So up until 1958, there was no mandatory retirement age in the United States from the FAA to stop flying. 1958, they said, okay, it's going to be 60. Well, lifespan has increased a little bit and health and stuff since 1958. That's why in 2017 they changed to 65. It's probably going to go up, so you got a lot of time. What I'm getting at is my recommendation is to go into the military and to get military flight training. And the reason is because this sounds like an ad. It's the best training available. I was in the Navy for 20 years, and the Navy probably spent more than $15 million on my training alone. And you just can't get that in the civilian environment. And that's because the taxpayer basically has bottomless pockets. So in the military, the training, they didn't spend that much money on me at initial training, but over 20 years, most of the flights you do are training flights, because the only kind of flights there really are in the military are the training flights or combat flights. Unfortunately, we don't spend much time doing that. So, and the training is rigorous, but it's absolutely the way to do it. And then, if you do that, once you get your, what's called in the military, GBM, which means obligated service, and I can't tell you what that is now. It's probably different for each service, and I've been retired from the military for 28 years, so I have no idea of how the training is going today and what that is. But once your obligated service in the military is up, poof, you are out. And as long as you were successful in the military flying whatever you were flying, and you have good record and all of that stuff, the airlines will grab you. If you're going in as a civilian, as you guys know, you're probably going to go through everything from getting your private pilot's license to your instrument ticket and probably CFI and all of that stuff. And then you got to get hired, usually by the regional airlines. And that's great because you will do a lot of flying in the regional airlines. FAA restricts airline flying to $1,000 hours in a calendar year. And in the regional airline, you won't get that much in the military, but you don't really need it. Regional airlines, they will be pushing you to get all the flight time basically that's legal. And in the regionals, you're working real hard and you're basically getting not very much money. I think some of them are only $21, $22 an hour now, which is hardly enough to live on. But what you're doing is getting all that very valuable airline flight time. And then when you get to a certain point, and it's different all the time, if the airlines are doing badly and the economics for airlines are doing badly, you're not going to get a job with the major airlines. Well, in the 20 years I was at United Airlines, which until I was flying there, had never furloughed anybody since they started in 1935, really, is when United Airlines really started as United Airlines. They never furloughed until 9/11. And that was pretty good, but then they did all the airlines furloughed. So at United, we furloughed 2,400 pilots out of 10,000, and for several years, nobody was getting hired at the airlines because there was no movement. And as a matter of fact, at the time I was at United, there is what is called, known by the old people who were there at the time, the lost 10 years. In most of the airline industry in this country, there was no moving up for 10 years for any of the airlines because it was static. The first thing that started that was 9/11, which put all the major airlines into Chapter 11, and they had to reorganize. And then after that, the next big thing was the recession, Great Recession, which was 2008, 2009, and it slowly came back. And then, of course, there was COVID. So the airline industry, it looks like a sine wave on a chart. It's up and down, and it's up and down. So if you were to go into the military, it's a different lifestyle. You're away from home a lot. It's tough. You work a lot. But the flying that you're going to do is absolutely untouchable, especially if you get into tactical jets, because that's doing stuff like just right out of Star Wars. So if you can do that, my only regret in life is that I can't go back and start and do it all over again, because I would do that in a heartbeat. If I was your age, I would absolutely do it all over again, because and airline pilots will tell you this, any kind of professional pilot will tell you that if you become a pilot for a living, a professional pilot, you never have to grow up. And for those of you who have pilots in the family or whatever, that's basically true. You're just a kid playing with a great toy all the time. And when you do get to the airlines, you can make, to the major airlines, United, American, Delta, Southwest. There used to be a lot more airlines, but most of them have all collapsed into just really 3 major international American airlines, plus Southwest, which is a huge airline, one of the majors, but it's mostly domestic. Once you've been in an airline for a while and you get more and more senior and you get to the left seat, especially with the bigger equipment, the money you make is fabulous. And I got a couple friends making $500 an hour flying airliners. That's pretty good. But you can only do it for 1,000 hours a year. But still, you live pretty good. But I would recommend the military. So how many of you want to go straight to the airlines? Okay, it's good, but there's a lot of work because you're going to have to spend years in the regionals getting enough time to where you're competitive to get hired by the major airlines. But you know what? You do the regionals long enough, you will. Because like I say, it's a sine wave like this in the airline industry. But you will always run into one of the peaks. So if you want to do this, you'll do well. Some people, like I did, stay in the military because it was so much fun that you couldn't leave it as long as you were flying. So that's something to do. For those of you who are doing just flying for fun, I can't think of a better hobby to do. It's really cool. It is expensive. It's very expensive, especially when you buy your own airplane, which you'll all want to do, even if you're just regular weekend flyers. And you've all heard it. Any of you boaters? Boats? This is Florida. Come on, we got a lot of boaters around here. What are the two best days of a boat owner's life?
Buying and selling it.
The day you buy it, the day you sell it. That's even more true with airplanes. Because when you buy an airplane, you've just made, even if you buy an airplane with cash, you've just made the first down payment on that airplane. Because they require a lot of maintenance, and the FAA is pretty tight on this. And everything else, you got to have the 100 hours done, the annual done. Anything breaks, you got to have done. And in fact, if you were to go out and get a fully equipped new Cessna 172 or something with a Garmin 1000, all the really cool stuff, the avionics and the electronics in the thing cost almost as much as the airframe and the engine, but because they're very expensive to do that. So anyway, back to me. This is your last semester?
It is my last semester.
And then you get your bachelor's degree?
I do, yes.
I was in my last semester of university 50 years ago today.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
Huh.
I think college is pretty much the same. Flying is completely different. I don't know anything about flying today because I've been retired from the Navy for 28 years. I've been retired from United Airlines for 8 years. And things change so fast in that environment, this technological tip-of-the-spear environment, which is aviation, which is what aviation is, as you all know. Things happen so fast that nowadays, almost with some things, as soon as you learn something, or learn how to run a device, Garmin 1000 would be a pretty good thing because that's a pretty complex piece of gear when you're learning all of it. As soon as you learn something, and you all know this, you're computer age, you grew up with computers and software and all of this stuff. As soon as you learn something and get good at it, some of these things become obsolete. When I started at United Airlines, when the weather was bad and you'd leave the gate, it may be snowing or something, and you go to get your airplane de-iced before you go flying, you're pulling out your flight manual and you're going through charts. Up and down, okay, well, what's the temperature and how long we've been here and how's all this going? And we were using charts and weight and balance charts and all of that. None of that's done anymore. We used to carry around these pub suitcases and carrying this thing around, and you got all these pubs in there, and every 6 weeks or so, they go out of date. And you get a package of these things where you have to, we call it punch and pubs, you have to update all these things 1 page at a time. It took hours and hours to do this. It's crazy. And at United Airlines, the biggest pilot injury was when you go into the cockpit, right? And you're the captain, you're in the left seat. What you do is you pull your seat would roll out from its flying position toward the aisle, and then it makes a space between the bulkhead and the seat, and that's where you would put your bag. And at United Airlines, the most common injury is injuries from pilots hurting their back, putting these friggin' bags down on either side. No kidding. That was United's biggest pilot injury on the job. Of course, pilots take full advantage of that situation. They're pilots. But by the time I retired, there were no publications. You didn't carry anything around. You had an iPad. When I first came to the airline, you'd get there early, you'd go into operations, you'd look at the flight plan, you would accept it or change it, call up, do whatever you needed to do. Then you'd get your weather brief. Yeah, that's okay. And you're either going to change this, change that, or accept everything. And then you get in the airplane, and then you got your computer, and it's got the flight path and all of that stuff because you got inertial navigation gear. And so you punch in, all your checkpoints, your destination. You do all this, you get ready, and then you go. Not anymore. Now you got an iPad. So let's say that you're at your layover. all right? And you're on a 3-day or a 4-day trip, and you've been at the hotel, and you get up and you jump in the van or the limousine that's going to take you to the airport. So you got 2 of you sitting there, and you pull out your iPad and you look at your flight. There's your flight. Oh yeah, we're going to Chicago here from LA today. And we look at the weather. Yeah, weather, okay, looks good. Yeah, we can do this. And let's look at the flight plan. Yeah, the flight plan, how much gas do we, yeah, we'll look at what's the weather, do we need there's the alternate. Okay, looks good. And you just electronically sign it and hit a button, and that's all you do. You don't even go to base ops to brief, because you just briefed in the van while you're going there on your iPad, and you accepted the flight, you signed it off with flight control, and you don't go get a weather brief because you just did it on your iPad. You go to the airplane, you stick your iPad there, where a little holder in the window, it's all done. You don't load the route in anymore because it's already in there. They already did that, so you go accept, then you go flying. That's how much it changed just in the time I was at the airlines. And so as you get in there, there's going to be more changes and faster changes. What this does is it makes everything easier, which is the whole point. It makes everything safer and makes everything easier. Airline flying today, getting on, the news, of course, is designed 6 o'clock news to be sensational. It's entertainment. So they're putting sensational stuff in there. What's Trump doing now and this? What's happening over there in Gaza or whatever now? As a matter of fact, they're not even talking about Gaza anymore, because the more sensational things now are Ukraine and the rest of the stuff going on. But if you look at the news, it's all airplane stuff. What was it, 2 days ago? A Delta, they had the right engine on fire after taking off. They come back, if you guys look at the news stuff. But every night on the news, they find something now about aviation, and this is all because of the crash there at Reagan Airport, where the RJ coming in to land on runway 33 got hit by the Black Hawk helicopter. So ever since then, there's all this fear mongering about getting in airplanes and flying. As a passenger, getting on an airplane is the safest thing you're ever going to do all day. When a passenger leaves their house, the most dangerous part of their day is going from their driveway at home to the airport. That's the most dangerous part of the day. Until this crash occurred there at Washington, I keep calling it Washington National, at Reagan Airport, we hadn't had a U.S. airline crash with a fatality in 14 years. Every year, a minimum of 30,000 Americans die on the highway. So in just a 10-year period, you got 300,000 dead people from being in car crashes. And during that time, 0 people died in a U.S. airliner fatality. So it's very, very safe. And the reason it's safe is because everybody's well-trained and the standards are very high. When you go to an airline, I was surprised. When I was at the Navy, of course, that's pretty rigorous training. Especially aircraft carrier stuff, because there's no room for error in any of that stuff. So I thought, I'm retired, got 20 years, I'm retiring from the airline, I'm going to retire from the Navy, I'm going to United Airlines, it's going to be great. This is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to be able to sleep through classes and sleep through the simulators. Boy, was I mistaken. I had to study harder starting at United Airlines than I'd ever had to do in the military, because that was the standard. It was, they're pretty strict. All the majors are like that. And that's why, one of the reasons, aside from the safety of today's technology, that it's so safe. Because when you get there as an airline pilot at one of the major airlines, you are really going to know what you're doing. And you have to. You have to be safe. A lot of the flying I did, both in the military and at the airlines, you really had to know stuff, because stuff does go wrong. Usually it all gets worked out. Like these guys that had the fire on the Delta, 2 days ago. A bird went down there and ate the engine, or flames coming out the back. That happens. But they did everything right. Or how about the RJ at up there in Canada? You've seen that, right? The thing lands, and the thing flips over, and nobody died. I could not believe that the airplane didn't explode, because there's still fuel in it, and that nobody got killed. That's amazing. There was some good stuff. The air crew, mostly the flight attendants, were such professionals. They got everybody out of that airplane safely. That's unbelievable that happened. And the pilots almost every day are preventing bad things from happening through the skill and the knowledge. So airlines are really cool. So the airline's a great way to go. But I would, if any of you got any thoughts about going to the military, one of you guys said the Air Force, boy, I'll tell you what, you will never be sorry about that, because it is a lifestyle. It's weird, especially in the Navy, when you go home and you leave your spouse and your kids for 6 months at a time, but you're out there doing just really, really cool stuff, great flying. Any questions about any of that? So again, for naval flight training, I'll go through that real quick just to get you an idea what that is. It's all different than now, because I did all that stuff. Yes?
When you sign up for the military or the Navy, you're not insured to be a pilot when you sign up for that?
You're not what?
You're not like, it's not like for sure you're going to go be a
Oh, no,
pilot.
oh, no, it's not. You just go to the Navy recruiter. Now, what I did is I went through officer candidate school. I just went through school as a civilian. And you're going to laugh. And I'd always wanted to fly, but I never had the resources, the money, or anything to do that when I was in school. I just had to kind of work my way through college and take out a student loan and all of that stuff. And then one day in 1976, I went to the movie theater with my girlfriend and saw the movie Midway, which it's an old movie. They made a second one since then. But it's all about the Battle of Midway, where airplanes are flying off aircraft carriers and sinking other aircraft carriers. It's really cool. And I walked out of the theater and I went, "Ooh, I got to go do this." That was on a Friday night. So Monday morning, I walked into the Navy recruiter's office. And long story short, details aside, I said, the recruiter sitting there, I saw Midway, we're going to do that. And he goes, "Step right up, son, and sit down and sign this right here." And the rest is history. So I went to officer candidate school. Now, in the Navy, you get a lot of people at the Naval Academy, at ROTC, and then I don't think they have AOCS or OCS anymore. This is all 50 years ago stuff, almost. But the answer is, no, you just go. You just go there, just off the street. You got to have a bachelor's degree. And they don't care what it's in. Most of you guys are scientists, right, doing sciences? I got my degree in journalism. I knew nothing, and I ended up as a test pilot. So really, you can, as long as you're nominally intelligent, you can do stuff. You can go through and you do all the stuff. All you got to do is apply yourself, But does that answer your question? All you need is a bachelor's degree.
The thing is, what if you sign up and they place you somewhere else, and now you don't want to be in the Navy anymore? Because all you wanted to do is be a pilot, but they said, no, you're not right to be a pilot.
I cannot answer.
You signed your life away.
I can't answer that. You'd have to talk to the Navy recruiters about that. I don't know how that works, especially now. It's a good question, but pretty much, if I would go in there and I'd say, I want to sign up for the aviation program, and if they say, well, no, you can't do that, well then there's your answer. But if they say to you, yeah, okay, we'll let you, you can go to the aviation program, and then they're expecting you to do it and to finish it and complete it. You got a bachelor's degree. The next biggest hurdle in the military at all, and it's the same hurdle going for the airlines, except it's not as rigorous. The Navy was very rigorous, and that's you got to pass the physical stuff. When I went in, you went to the NAMI, Navy Aerospace Medical Institute. Thank you, and that's in Pensacola. And you spent the better part of a day there, and they poked and prodded you and stuck you. They tried to find anything at all wrong with you. And there's a reason for that, because pulling seven Gs, and looking at specs out there at the sky that might be enemy airplanes, you have to be fairly physically fit anyway. So they look for anything that's wrong. And so yes, we had some guys that were in there, and they didn't pass. But I think that they weren't at that day. I don't think they were obligated to remain in at that point. They could walk after that. I'm not sure what it's like today. Also, when I went in, you had to have 20/20, at least 20/20 vision uncorrected. I don't think that they have that requirement anymore. At the airlines, they don't. It's just 20/20 corrected. If I pull these glasses off, when you get old, your eyes go bad. Now I take these off when I'm getting into the shower or getting to the pool or go to sleep. But I'm perfectly legal to fly airliners, and at this point, I'd be perfectly legal to fly fighters. I started wearing glasses at nighttime to look at small print when I was still in the Navy flying F-18s. And there was a day when that would have never been allowed. So they're lightening up with some of this physical stuff, and they should, because saying that you have to have 20/20 vision uncorrected, there's no real reason for it. I mean, that's the way it had been for decades, just because that's the way it had been. But finally somebody got smart and said, we're losing a lot of good pilots just because they have to put glasses on. So everything's changing about that, so I can't really answer that. But once you pass the physical and then you get into the flying program, they're anticipating that you're going to complete and get your wings. And you know what? Most everybody does, unless something bad happens or unless they decide they don't want to do it, because some people decide they don't want to do it. I've seen people who go out there and they're carrier pilots, and after a number of dark, scary, stormy nights in the middle of the ocean, they come back and they go, I can't do this anymore, and they're probably the most intelligent people in the room because they realize this is a really stupid thing to be doing. But when all of your friends do it for a living, it's kind of that follow the leader, you get sucked into that. So that's why people do that sort of thing. But it's most definitely worth it. So when I went through flight training, I started off primary flight training, which was propeller. And you did your AT6, your T6, AT6 thing, and I got to fly T-28s, which is basically the same thing on steroids. Came out a few years later. I was one of the last people who got to do that. So I got 70 hours on that. It took a few months. Then I flew T2s, which is basic jets, and they got 100 hours in that. Now, when you get a number of in Navy flight training, if you get a number of hours in the airplane, like a T2's 100 hours, you'll get probably double that time in simulators, because the simulators are very, very, very important. Simulators used to be so silly. If you go to the VAC museum out there, you'll see an old simulator, from the 30s and stuff. But today, simulators are so good, as some of you know, that it completely replicates the airplane. I was really surprised when I left the Navy after 20 years and I went to United Airlines. The first time that I actually got into an airplane, which was a 737, and flew it off the runway, it had 160 passengers in the back. The first time I ever flew the airplane. It was a regular scheduled flight, because I spent several months in these fantabulous simulators. And so at the airlines, that's how you learn how to fly an airplane, is in the simulators. And they are that good. Of course, these are zillion-dollar simulators now, and they're very good. Well, now the military has gotten to the point where their simulators are extraordinary. It's like something out of outer space or something, simulators. So you get a lot of simulator time, which you want. And when I went through the Navy, and I would do this going to the airlines too, they had open simulator time, usually in the evenings, where you could just walk in and go in a simulator as long as you wanted. They had the simulator operators there. So I lived in those simulators when I was in flight school as much as I could. That way, when I got into the airplane, because every flight you do in the military is a syllabus flight. You got to check off all these boxes. Maybe it's a formation flight. Maybe it's an instrument flight. Maybe it's a bombing flight. Maybe it's a dogfighting flight. And every flight you take is in the syllabus, and you have to pass all these flights. So if you go into the simulators and do these things on your own before that, when you get in the airplane, you pretty much already know what's going on. And I'm sure it's the same way today. So anytime you can get into a simulator, well, I wouldn't pass that up. Simulators these days are so good. So then I got 100 hours in basic jets, and I went to fly A4s and advanced jets, and that was another 100 hours. And so that took about a year and a half to do all of that. And then you go to the RAG, which is the Readiness Air Squadron, in whatever airplane you're going to fly for real in the fleet. And for me, that was A7s, because I always knew I only wanted to fly a single-seat airplane. I didn't want anybody else in the airplane. Being on a Harley, I want to be the only person in the airplane. And at the time, the only single-seat airplane in the Navy was the A7, and I had my choice. I was fortunate I had my choice of any airplane, so I chose the A7, and I would still do that again today, even though it's a subsonic, ugly airplane. It's a was a cool airplane to fly in, you know, single seat. And so that took about another 6 months. So it's basically 2 years from the time you start flight school until you get out into a fleet squadron flying the airplane you want. And that's a long time. But guess what? You're really good at this point. You know, you got about 400 hours of flight time, and you really do know what you're doing. And then you get to a fleet squadron, and you realize you don't know what you're doing. Because everybody there in the squadron, you know, I showed up as, they call it a boot camp or a nugget when you're a new person. You're a new gal in there. You're the nugget, you're the new guy, you don't know anything. You know, it's like when you're a senior in high school, you know, you're running that show. And then you go to college and you're a freshman. You know, you're a subhuman, you know, and then you're a senior and you're the queen again, you know, or the king. It's kind of the same way, because I show up to squadron, I didn't know anything. And the commanding officer and the executive officer, these guys had flown 200, 300 combat missions in Vietnam. So it's a learning curve, but you do that. And the same thing occurs in the airlines. You go to the airlines, you fly in the right seat, eventually you really know what you're doing, and you end up in the left seat. Now that's really when life is really good. So I flew A7s for a long time, and then I went out and I got lucky again. I got to be a test pilot out in the high desert in California, and mostly flying. This is when the F-18s were new, so I got to do, you know, test flying on a new airplane. And I still flew some other airplanes too, really cool, especially the Cobra, AH-1 Cobra, the Marine attack helicopter. That was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you right now, yeah.
How do you become a test pilot in the first place?
Well, that's a great question. There are two kinds of, you want me to go through this, Tom?
Yeah.
There are two kinds of test pilots in the Navy, and I'm sure the Air Force does it the same way. And Marine pilots are really naval aviators. There's no Marine flight school. Marine pilots are naval aviators because the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy. So Marine pilots are Navy pilots, you know, so they go through the same stuff. There's two kinds of test pilots in the Navy and the Marine Corps. I think the Air Force is the same. There are the developmental test pilots. You know, these are really the cool stuff. That's where they're doing the developmental stuff. And back in the incipient jet age, back in the early 50s and stuff, everything was experimental. Those guys were going out there to the desert and flying, and most of them died because everything was, they were designing supersonic jets on slide rules and whiz wheels. It's not like today. And so they build a jet and it go off, and this thing will go flying off the desert out of Edwards Air Force Base or China Lake or something. And they go, how much fuel has it got? It's got an hour's worth of fuel. Okay, all right. Well, let's hope it gets back within an hour. So if the airplane came back within an hour, they go, okay, this airplane might work, let's continue with it. If the airplane didn't come back in an hour, they went, uh-oh, it crashed. So we're not going to continue with that. And there were a lot of airplanes. Have you ever heard of something like the F-7 Cutlass, which was the name of the airplane? That's a good example of a total failure for an airplane. There were a lot of them that just didn't work out. Nowadays, it's years and years developing an airplane like the F-35. You know, I mean, this thing is, yeah, these things, oh, there you go. Yeah, this it looks cool, bad idea. But there were many of those things going on. But anyway, there are developmental test pilots that do this. And they all go to test pilot school. In the Navy and Marines, it's Pax River in Maryland. And for the Air Force, it's Edwards Air Force Base out in California. And there the test pilots get to do the initial stuff. But there's also operational test pilots. And I was in a test squadron, Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 5 out in the desert, and about half the guys were TPS graduates. But also, since this is operational test flight is, as long as an airplane is in service, it's always being tested, because they make airframe changes. They make sensor changes, they make weapons changes, they make all sorts of changes with the airplane, and tactics changes. So you want to have fresh guys from the fleet who have been out there deployed on the fleet doing all that, and they bring them in to a test squadron because they've got the latest information fleet. And that's what I did. So I got lucky. I was a fleet pilot for years, and then I just got orders out to go do flight tests. And it's like, yes. So that was a lot of fun. But that's how that's done. So now to be a TPS guy, you got to know like math and stuff. You know, I can do this much math. If I take my shoes off, I can double it. You know, but you guys, most of you are in, you know, are in that world. of engineering and math, so you guys, they'd pick you up for TPS. Yes?
Is there a big difference between naval flying and Air Force flying?
Okay. You know, you'll read, oh, Navy pilots are the best because they land on aircraft carriers. It's the same people. It's the same people. The training is different. The Navy fighter community they do all the same thing that the Air Force fighters do. Additionally, they go to the boat, to the carrier, and they do all that, which is that's a whole new world. And the Air Force guys and gals don't do that. They don't train to. Could they? Oh yeah, they could do it, but they don't. They can't because they've never been trained. But they're the same people. And the Air Force and the Navy and Marines, they exchange. Like you'll have career Air Force pilots, and they'll pick a guy, and they'll send him to go to a Navy squadron for 3 years as an exchange pilot. And a Navy guy will go to the Air Force, you know, to fly F-15s or F-22s for 3 years as an exchange pilot. And the Air Force guys who have been flying in the Air Force for years, they go out there and they get trained how to land on a carrier, and they do it. It's fine. It's all the same people. The flying is different, but it's all the same caliber of people that do all this stuff. Does that answer your question? Okay. So I did flight tests in the desert, and then I went back, and by this time I'm only flying F-18s. And then I went to be a department head as an 04 Lieutenant Commander Squadron, and did the Gulf War thing, went out and played that game. And then after that, okay, there is a bad thing about the military, and that's sometimes you got to do shore duty and you can't fly. So they put a rope around my neck and put a gun to my head, and I had to go to the Pentagon for a while and work there. Sometimes that happens. I didn't do that. And then later on, I went back and had a command turn of an F-18 squadron, and then I had another flying billet on a carrier staff, and then I retired after 20 years. But especially in the military, you want to fly all the time. You don't want to do anything else. You'll skip meals, you'll skip sleep, you'll do anything you can to fly. You fly every chance you get. In the airlines, there's 3 kinds of people in the airlines. You're limited to 1,000 hours a year. And you got to work pretty hard, actually, to get 1,000 hours a year at the end of the day. There are people who are airline pilots, but they want to maximize their time at home, which is reasonable, and not be on the road. So they make the least money because they're flying the least, and they're at home the most. Then there's the opposite. There's the people who want to fly all the time because they want to make the most money. So they fly every chance they get, you know, so they're home the least. And then there's kind of a medium in the middle. You know, you balance your time at home and your flying time. And flying time in the airlines equals money. There's a direct correlation, flying time and money. So that's kind of how that works at the airlines. Anyway, that was what I did in the Navy and what I did in the airlines. Again, I would do all of that all over again. But the fact that you people are sitting here in the room and you're interested in that, you're starting early, you're getting in on the ground floor. And airlines are only going to grow. Airline flying is only going to increase and grow, because that's just the way we are in this country. The Europeans go, and the Asians go, all this flying, why don't you build trains? You know, there's all this stuff about high-speed trains. They got a high-speed train from Orlando down to Miami. Yeah, and that thing's going all day long, and they're going to lose money for it forever, because those trains are mostly empty doing that. But see, there's this big thing to do trains, because if any of you have spent time in Asia or in Europe, trains is how you get around, because these countries are very packed with people. You know, and these countries are small. So trains make the most sense over there. Flying doesn't make as much sense, because, you know, if you're going to fly from London to Paris, why bother? You know, it's actually, by the time you go in there, park your car, go through security, all that, get on the airplane, do all that, you can damn near get in your car and drive from London through the Channel and get to Paris in almost the same amount of time, and it's a lot easier. But the United States, we're almost 3,000 miles across and 1,000 miles top to bottom. We're huge. And, you know, we had a train system. When airlines started, we had the best train system in the world. But it just doesn't make any sense anymore. So the airline industry is only going to continue to grow. And as they come on with this next-gen stuff, and they can pack airplanes closer and closer together, there's going to, you know, the skies are going to be more crowded, and there's going to be more flying. But aviation industry is getting huge. And for astronauts, yeah, that field's going to open up. It's going to be very, very competitive because so many people want to do it. And of course, you don't go into space much. Most of the time is training, but that's fine, because you do go into space. And like I said, I had 3 squadron mates when I was flight testing that went on to be astronauts. And if you could listen to their tales of flying the shuttle, it would blow your mind. Because it's what you think. You're flying an airplane from space at Mach 25 to come down and land, to glide. It's a gliding landing out there, on 15,000 foot runway out there at the Cape. I mean, I can't even imagine such a thing myself. Would I do that? Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's really cool. So if any of you want to do that kind of thing. Okay, I'm taking up time. What I'd like you to talk about, and I have some experience with this, is, what was the movie? Was it Footloose? What was the John Travolta movie with Staying Alive?
No.
Staying Alive. Saturday Night Fever.
That was it?
Staying Alive. In aviation, the critical thing is staying alive. The list of my colleagues, friends, and squadron mates who are not alive anymore, that list is too long for me to think about. It's a lot safer now. Flying gets safer and safer through time. If you do a chart, and on the left side is danger, danger high, no danger low, and you go from the beginning of flying out to the present time, there's almost a linear line of safety. And that line basically goes from, at the beginning of aviation, dangerous, to this time, that line goes like this. It has gotten exponentially safer through time. A lot of that is training, a lot of that is the right people being in the cockpit, and a lot of that is technology. Even so, when I first was going on 6-month deployments on the carrying their Navy, you'd have usually 9 squadrons, different kind of airplanes on the ship, and about 75 airplanes or so, 80 airplanes, about 100 pilots, depending on the squadron. And every time that ship left the West Coast to go over to Asia, or left the East Coast to go over to Europe or the Med or the Red Sea, you all looked at each other. You knew not everybody was coming back. And that was always true when I first went in the Navy. Now, the opposite is true. You look at everybody in the room, and unless something really unusual happens, you're all going to make it back. That's how things have changed just in the last 40 years or so, and now in naval aviation on carriers. It's gotten a lot safer. But you have to work every time you're in the airplane, even on the ground. You know about the RJ that just crossed the runway at Midway Airport in Chicago, and Southwest had to go around. That stuff should never, ever happen. And it does, because the pilots in one airplane or another are not thinking properly. And I was talking to you, Gabby, about this. In an airplane, you have to be you've got to be navigating and flying and doing all the rest of that stuff. But your mind really needs to be what's going to happen? What's going to go wrong? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next? What do I have to do? What mistake am I making? What am I going to screw up in 5 minutes? How do I stay out of trouble until I get this thing on the ground? That sounds crazy, but that's really the way you need to think, because we don't have wings. We do not belong in the air. We do not belong underwater. We're ground creatures. We have cheated nature, okay, and physics, utilize physics, and now we get ourselves in the air, go around the world and stuff in the air. That's not a natural thing. It's very dynamic, and if any of these critical portions of the dynamism breaks, you're done. And it happens. And the way to prevent that is to, and I'll say it, when you go flying, you need to be a little bit scared. Every time you go flying, not too scared, because you've got to have confidence. If you're going to take an airplane, a machine off the ground and get it in the air into this dynamic environment where nothing critically can go wrong, you have to have confidence to do that. You really do. And if you want to fly off aircraft carriers and stuff, you got to you really got to feel like the king or queen, even though you're not, because that's what you have to do in order to be stupid enough or whatever, brave enough to do this. And if you want to go into outer space, you're a real nutcase, because outer space, you're unsurvivable out there, But you got to have the confidence to do it. Okay, so you got to be confident if you're going to fly airplanes. You got to be confident about your abilities. However, critical mistake. Overconfidence, okay? You cannot be overconfident. And here's what I suggest you all do if you have not done it before. Go home, get on your computer, go to YouTube, and there are several YouTubes out there with a compilation of fatal air show accidents. Have you ever seen those? I just watched one the other day. It was like 20 minutes long, and it was just one fatal air show accident after the other. Now, not knowing how any of these occurred, because the only way you'll ever know why an accident occurred is when the NTSB comes out with a final report. Up until then, it's all conjecture. When that airplane was hit by the Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac landing at Reagan Airport, as soon as that thing crashed, you got all these talking heads, all these experts, all this, well, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. I'm really familiar with that because I've flown that airport countless times, and you're all familiar with that accident, right? Familiar with that. My only surprise when that happened is that it took so long for that to happen, because for years pilots have been filling out FSAPs. Anybody know what an FSAP is? That's when you see something dangerous or something shouldn't be done, anything from fatigue to a stupid rule or something at an airport that shouldn't be, you can fill out an FSAP. And that's an anonymous report that you make to the NTSB, and it's anonymous so that they'll get the truth. Because if something's not anonymous and your name's associated to it, there's a lot of people, they're not going to say anything, they're in trouble. So these are all anonymous. And I filled out FSAPs, when I was at the airlines, for something I saw that was dangerous. And NTSB takes this stuff seriously. So what I'm saying is, until NTSB report comes out about any accident, it's all conjecture, it's all nonsense. Okay? So things have gotten a lot safer. You can't be cocky when you fly. And if you look at, I'm talking about these videos that you see on YouTube about air show accidents, yeah, maybe something happened to the airplane, because some of these airplanes, when they're doing this stuff, it's really difficult on the airplane physically. I mean, the airplanes because they're doing some stuff that I look at and I go, that's stupid. But they do it because this is what these guys do. But if a critical part falls off the airplane or something, then this thing's crashed and they die. But almost all of these accidents, almost all accidents, are pilot error. And most of the fatal accidents I was familiar with in the Navy, almost all of them, pilot error. And these are from very good professional pilots. So pilot error is almost always the cause of accidents and fatalities. And any of us can make these errors. So you got to work really hard to not make errors when you're flying. You will. Oh, that brings up, I know you guys are falling asleep and stuff. This is something I learned when I went to the airlines. I was a cocky single-seat pilot for 20 years in the Navy. And single-seat pilots, they've got the mindset, you never need more than one person in an airplane. If you put more than one person in an airplane, that's extra fuel that you could have. That space and weight got taken up by some asshole sitting behind me who's not doing anything. Oh, this is what I thought for all us single-seat guys. We were convinced of this. And we would laugh at like the F-14 guys or these guys, or the A-6 guys, because they got adult supervision in the back seat. You don't need that. You don't need that. And we all thought that, because we were cocky. Some of us were too cocky and are not around anymore. Then I go to the airlines. Because when I was flying single seat, yeah, I would make mistakes and I'd catch my mistakes and I go, oops, that happens. We're all going to make mistakes when we're flying. We all make mistakes in most everything. Who here has a perfect 100% average on all their tests and exams in college? Okay, see, so we all screw stuff up. Okay, aviation, it's a lot more critical than getting an F on a test. An F in aviation is you just took your last test. So, you know, I thought, oh yeah, I don't need anybody. Oh, I make mistakes, but I catch them. And if I don't catch a mistake, well, it was never a big deal anyway. Then I go to the airlines. Now I'm sitting in a cockpit with another person there. And as I'm flying along, and you know, you got the guy sitting next to me going, Carl, what about this? Oh, shit. Oh, okay. Well, you did that wrong. Oh, well, you missed that. Ooh. And then I'm in the right seat. I'm a first officer, and I'm going to the captain. Hey, Bob, what about that? You forgot that. Oh, yeah, thanks. So you learn in the airlines, you're making mistakes all the time. Guess what? That's why there are two people in the cockpit, because they're double checking each other, and you make mistakes all the time. One time I'm on a flight. I think it was 737. It wasn't a long flight. I think I was going from LA to Seattle or something on the West Coast, just a couple hours. And we're flying along, you know, like that, because autopilot's on, you got your route, the airplane's doing what it needs to do. And there are some cars that do that now, which is really scary. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to find out how many actual procedures I need to do on a normal flight. From the time you start the pre-flight until you shut the engines down. You know, I'm talking about throwing switches, you know, turning dials and doing all of this stuff. And I came up with, there were about, as first officer in 737, in a normal flight, I had to do about 300 things. There were about 300 steps of actually doing things that I had to do, because that was procedure, that was protocol. So I thought to myself, 300 things. Well, let's see. If there's 300 things, now in school, taking an exam, if there's 300 things, and I only miss 6 things, that's a 98 percentile. That's summa cum laude, all right? If you're an airliner and on one flight, you're screwing up 6 things, which is summa cum laude in school, you're not doing well at all. That's we all make mistakes, but six errors in one flight, that would be a lot. That's when and that's why you have 2 people in the cockpit. That's when I realized, you know, anytime you're flying alone without another pilot, which you're doing as a private pilot and learning, you really need to pay attention to what you're doing, because you are making mistakes. You're always making mistakes. Nobody wants to admit, but I'm here to tell you, we're all making mistakes all the time. How many of you when was the last time you had a kind of a close call in a car? Not necessarily your error, but the guy next to you who just swerved in front of you, or something like that. Or somebody who had a turn signal on, they were in the turn lane, and they didn't really mean to turn, and so they go by. So it's a good thing you didn't pull out from that stop sign when you thought that person was going to turn. This happens continuously all the time. So you got to be a little scared, but you have to be confident, but you always have to be looking for your mistakes. Right now, there's a big move in the airlines for a couple of things. Boeing isn't so much behind this. Airbus is behind this. They're really pushing this, and a lot of the airlines are pushing this. They're saying, with the technology today and the automation, you only need 1 pilot in a passenger airplane. Oh, this is a huge thing. And ALPA is the biggest airline, airline union. It's the biggest one. American Airline has its own union. I think Southwest has its own. I think not FedEx. UPS has its own, but most of them belong to ALPA, which is American American Pilots Airline Association or something like that. I don't know what it stands for. But anyway, because when you're in the airlines, you're a union member, all right? Whether you like unions or not, you're a union member when you're in the airline. So ALPA's fighting this, but there's a big thing being pushed by manufacturers, and some of the airlines, they only want 1. They think it's okay to just have 1 pilot with 200 or 300 people in the back. My take on that is insane. From a pilot's perspective. I know why they're doing that, because it's a lot cheaper for them. They don't have to hire these pilots at $300 or $400 an hour, you know, which is a lot of money. So they're pushing that. And then now Airbus is pushing for remotely controlled airlines. Who in this room would get into an airliner with nobody in the cockpit? All right? Because our computers never screw up, do they? You know, your laptop never crashes. There's never an update they put in there that is wrong. You know what I always do? I never do automatic updates, my computer or my iPhone or anything. When they say there's an update coming, like on my iPhone, it'll say, oh yeah, tonight at midnight or 1 a.m. we'll do an update, make sure it's plugged in, right? Well, I never do that. I always wait at least a week or two. Because any of you do Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator? Boy, they'll put an update in that, you're screwed some of the time because it's got bugs in it. And until they get the bugs worked out, you're fine. So the thought of pilotless airplanes, I mean, we have drones, but that's fine. That's a whole different, but there aren't people sitting in there. And mom and kids are not sitting in the back of a drone. But pilotless airliners? Yeah, that's just insanity. Anyway, got anybody questions about anything? Yeah.
If there's something you could have done differently about your career, what do you think that would look like?
I wouldn't do anything differently. Maybe a couple of girls I dated that I wouldn't. That's why I had to change my name 3 times. Just kidding. No,
That was the team.
I would go back, start out the same day and do the same thing all over again. Except if I could have, I would have started earlier, which I didn't have the resources to do that. I would do it all over again. And today I would do it all over again even more, because there are more opportunities now than there were in the past, especially with airlines or just fun flying. You know, there's a lot of airplanes out there, you know, and there are a lot of airfields out there. It's great. And in this country is wonderful. And the best flying environment in the country, Florida, far and away. You go flying every day of the year. If you were up there in Massachusetts or Maine right now, or Minnesota, you ain't doing much flying this time of year because it's nasty. You know, the weather's bad. This is it. Florida's the place. That's why there's so much flying here. Other questions? Yeah.
Well, I just want to ask, in the airline sector, other than having your ratings and, let's say, a bachelor's degree, what can make you stand out as an applicant, sort of like outside flying and maybe having degrees? Is there anything I can do to be more competitive in your experience?
You get all the flight time you can. And you do it in the most complex aircraft that you can. That's about all you can do. Every airline is different. This is an airline question for you. Every airline is different in their hiring practices. And you said Delta, right? You want to go to Delta? Is that what you said earlier?
Well, eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah. Okay. First of all, you say, I want to go to this airline, I want to go to the other airline. It doesn't work like that. What you do is when you're ready, when you got enough time to be competitive for getting hired by the airlines, and that's going to be, I don't know how many thousands of hours or how much time they want now, because it's always changing. Again, I've been out of the game for too long. But every airline hires people by different criteria. And I know this because I know how Delta used to do it. I don't know what's going on today. And I know how United used to do it, and they were exact opposites. Now, speaking of bachelor's degree, United Airlines has always had a bachelor's degree requirement, but I just read somewhere, maybe in the ALPA magazine, the Union magazine, that I think they might drop that requirement.
Even Delta says it's preferred now, it's not required.
Yeah, which makes sense, you know, because I've known a few PhDs couldn't tie their own shoes, and I've known a couple of high school dropouts that were Mensa. You know, so education is really valuable. Education is important. A bachelor's degree is so important. And it's not because I majored in journalism. I didn't do that. I didn't do that career for one day of my life. You know, I went through because it was very easy for me. You know, if I'd gone into astronautics or something, I probably wouldn't have lasted very long, you know, in college. But the whole point of a bachelor's degree is that employers, now some of them, they're specific, you know, specific things that you need to do. But really what employers want to see is that you had the gumption and the discipline to go through 4 more years of school at a higher level. That's what, so when they see that goat skin, when they see that parchment that you got a bachelor's degree, that's what employers want to see. Because here's somebody that has taken the time and done the work, okay? That's why that's important. So here's United versus Delta. At United, when you went to the interview, they assumed that you knew the gouge. And at Cecil Field, when it still existed, you know, the jet base up there in Jacksonville, it's gone now, there was a pass-down log. And then everybody who went to United and got hired would add to that pass-down log, a big, huge notebook that got passed around for years. And if you were a regular good guy there at Cecil Field, because you know everybody knew everybody and all the different squadrons, it's a fairly small community, they'd give you the log. So before, you know, as soon as I got an invitation to go to Delta, or excuse me, to go to United, you know, I got the log and I studied everything, down to the point of what kind of shoes you're wearing, what shade of maroon tie you had on, and your navy jacket with the right kind of white shirt. You were supposed to know that. And then you were supposed to know everything they were going to ask you, all right? And then you had to go to the simulator, and the simulator was designed at United. You had to, you know, the first day if you got through the interview, if you passed that, then the next day you got to do the simulator. And the simulator is what killed the most people. Because the simulator was designed, they had screwed this thing as a regular airline, simple simulator, so that if you let go of the controls, that thing would flip over. You know, it was very, very difficult. And they've got you flying approaches and stuff. So you were expected to know all the maneuvers that there were and all the approaches and all that stuff. And I spent a few $100s going to a simulator at the local community college in the simulator and practicing the routine over and over and over again. So when I show up at United, there's 8 guys sitting outside, you know, in a collection room, and each person is going to go into a different office with a hiring flight captain and a human resources people. And 7 of us show up, and we look like clones of each other. We all have exactly the right kind of maroon tie, all this. 7 of us. This other guy comes in, he didn't have a military background. He comes in, and he's got, you know, khaki slacks on, wearing a flight jacket and an open shirt. And we all looked at him, and he looked at us, and all 8 of us knew he was not going to get hired by United because he didn't have the gouge. So that's what they did. Now, to tell you how important that gouge was, I won't say names, but there was a former boss of the Blue Angels, commanding officer and flight lead of the Blue Angels. Let me tell you, these guys, they really know what they're doing. He retired, and United, as soon as he retired, United asked him to come to United Airlines to, you know, interview as a pilot. So he comes through, and the interview day, it was nothing to it. You know, shook hands, say, thank you very much for being here. You're going to love being at United. The next day, he goes to the simulator. He'd blown it off. He flunked it. The boss, commanding officer and flight lead of the Blue Angels, got rejected by United Airlines. It's because he didn't do the gouge. Delta. Delta's the opposite. If Delta finds out that a pilot goes to a guy who's got an interview and tells him what happened, if they find out, that pilot can get fired. Delta was the opposite. They wanted people to go in there not knowing anything at all. And that's how that went. So every airline does it differently. Oh, here's a note, by the way. Delta did something United didn't. Back in the day, Delta, you had to take a shrink test. After you did your interview, after you did your simulator, after you got your flight physical, and all this stuff takes a period of time. Then you go, and the shrink talks to you. And he is the final arbiter as to whether Delta is going to hire you. And there were a lot of great Navy F-18, F-14 pilots who passed everything with flying colors. Of course they did. And they flunked the nut test, you know, and they weren't hired. And this team of psychiatrists at Delta, it was a father and a son team. And they'd been doing this for years. And they were the last deciding factor who gets hired to be a pilot at Delta Airlines. What time frame is this? This is 97, 98 time frame. So a good friend of mine, call sign Barf, I don't need to explain that, his name's John Noel. He was a commanding officer of a F-18 squadron, great guy, great pilot, as sane as they get. And he went to Delta, and so he went through all the stuff, passed all the stuff, and he goes to the shrink interview. They axe him, and Delta doesn't hire him. And we're all going, well, this is the sanest, most competent guy alive. He didn't get hired. So anyway, Mac Air, this is when F-18s were still built by Mac Air before Boeing bought Mac Air. And the Kuwaiti Air Force bought a bunch of F-18s. So Mac Air said, we'd like you to go over to Kuwait City and run the F-18 training program for the Kuwaiti Air Force with their F-18s. So he goes, oh my God, Kuwait, oh, that place sucks. You're going to give me how much money, McDonnell Douglas? I'll go. So he goes over there, and he's doing it. He's living in the penthouse of some fabulous hotel, because that's where he's living over there. He's been over there a few months. If you've ever been to Kuwait, and if you haven't, don't go. You ever been out in the middle of the ocean where you can't see land? You know, you're just out in blue water. If you turn the water into sand, 360 degrees, nothing but flat sand to the horizon, that's Kuwait. It's not a pleasant place. But he's over there, he's making money, okay. And on Christmas Eve one night, he gets a phone call. Ring, 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 ring. He picks it up and he goes, hello? Is this John Noel? Yeah, this is me. Hi, this is Captain so-and-so. I'm the chief hiring captain at Delta Airlines. And we've been looking through the records and we saw that you were not hired by Delta Airlines. We'd like you to come back and work for Delta. Can you start class next Thursday? And he goes, why, yes, I can. So he went back, flew for Delta until he retired. He's over 65 now. And he asked on the phone, well, you rejected me. Why are you accepting me? Well, you know, for years, we had this procedure to hire pilots, and the last checkpoint was the psych test, and they had the up or down decision making for the whole line. Us pilots, we hated that. Us, the hiring captains, we hated that. We tried to get that put down, but the company wouldn't listen. They wanted the psych test. Well, what changed it? Barf is on the phone. What changed it? He goes, well, 2 days ago, Dad, you know, the senior member of the psych team, he shot himself. So we started thinking, maybe the wrong people are deciding what pilots should be flying our airliners. And that's how that went. But so anyway, all the airlines are different. And the other thing is, you each want a particular airline, your airline people who want to fly. You don't pick your airline. What you do is, when you're ready, you put out, you know, fill out the request to be hired. You know, you fill out your application and you send them off. Send them all off. The first major airline, whoever it is, who asks you to come in, you know, for an interview to be hired, that's where you go. The first one. And once you get to that airline, major airline, you never, ever leave under any circumstance. Now, in corporate world and most of the world, people go up the ladder, usually, we hope, by competence, by demonstrated performance. That's how some people end up CEOs, young people as rocket scientists, that's how it goes. The airlines, this is how you advance. It's all date of hire. When you go to the airline and you get there, somebody who was hired a week before you will always be senior to you no matter what. No matter what. A person who was hired a week after you will always be senior to that person. Period. It's purely date of hire. And if the airline has to furlough people, you know what furlough means? It's you're laid off, except the only thing furlough means is when they start hiring again, you get to come back before any new hires out of the blue. So the furloughed people always get to come back when they start rehiring. That's all furlough means. But it's laid off. And all the airlines one time or another do this. But anyway, yeah, from the day you go to the airline, it's data hire seniority. And when they start furloughing people, they do it from the newest people on up. And as long as you can keep passing, you know, your yearly or however long your recalls are, you know, your seniority is based on how long you've been there. That's how it is. And you know what? It's not a bad idea. Any other questions? Anything about sport flying or any of that? What are your favorite airplanes? Are you flying?
Kind of. Light sport, lightning.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
It's an experimental, sport
two-person.
Oh, cool.
Her dad's a pilot.
Okay. Oh, cool. Well, your dad's a pilot?
Not for a living, but he has a sports pilot's license, so.
Okay. Yeah. Hang on to him and do that. Eddie, yeah.
Do you have any advice on how we can kind of like maintain your first class medical throughout a long career that is based on your health? Do you have any kind of advice?
No, you don't. There's, if you have a normal lifestyle, if you eat at McDonald's 3 times a day, in the long run, that's not going to be a good thing, But, you can, just by your lifestyle and your diet and stuff, if you're reasonable, everything's fine. If something happens, if you get cancer or something like that, or if your eyes go really bad or your hearing goes really bad, there's not much you can do about that. But the first class medical, which you have to take every 6 months, you're basically going in there, and it's a thorough medical exam. Every other time, another once a year, you get an EKG. You go in a time each time. They're going to look at your eyes, make sure that you're 20/20 corrected for near, middle, and high. And glasses are what fixes that, even though if you need glasses. The flight physicals are given by FAA designated flight surgeons, which are MDs. They can be DOs, and they get certified by the FAA to act on behalf of the FAA to give you a flight physical. And some of them give you a hearing test, and some of them don't. So each one you go to is different, and there are, and this gets around in the crowd that you're with, there are some flight surgeons who are a little easier than other flight surgeons, and those names get around. That's all community knowledge. And those guys get a lot of business, obviously. When I was domiciled in Denver for a long time, then I moved to DC to get domiciled there, and a buddy of mine said, go to this flight surgeon. I went to him, and this guy had a reputation for being really tough. But I went to him for 10 years, and he was fine, never had a problem with that, because he was real reasonable. But no, you go get your first class, and there's nothing much you can do about that. Just live normally and don't do, really stupid stuff. 100 miles an hour on a crotch rocket going down the road probably is not a good idea. And that happened today as I was coming here on Route 50. Doing at least 100.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I was thinking this guy's an organ donor, but thinking about it, he's not an organ donor. There's not going to be any organs left when he goes down.
Okay. We can still do questions, but we can also make it informal, so we'll stick around. I know that we don't really have a set meeting time, so we'll all stick around and talk. You don't have any set time limit either, so.
Go flying.
Yeah.
Flying is the most fun you can do, and if you can do flying for a living,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that's as fun as that.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah,
Sure.
thank you for showing up. Round
Sure.
of applause, please, for our guest speaker. That was fantastic. You had everyone hooked the whole time.